Okay, this might look relatively familiar because this is the subsequent follow-up to that last one. About that one was more. I'm not super well organized right now, so I'm not compartmentalizing these particularly well, I don't think. But that one was more focused on my hopes to start an art business on this channel. This one, I would like to talk a little bit more about things like the not necessarily the struggles, but the techniques, coping mechanisms, tools for being chronically ill slash on the spectrum as well. So, like, as somebody on the spectrum, I know that I'm generally considered to be lower support needs. I don't need a lot of help, and for a long time, I've navigated as a self capable individual without any supports at all. And I think that's some of where my problem comes from now is I've hit a spot in my life where I can't do it anymore. I can't do it without some kind of help somewhere. And it's not because like I'm in need of some special help that other people don't have. It's and not that there's anything wrong with that either. But I'm in a situation where I don't have the support system that most people have in their lives that don't even think about what they have. Like I've got very little in support structure around me and help to assist with anything that goes wrong. And I have this there's a doctor out there who calls it shit life syndrome, where a thing goes wrong and then as you're trying to work out a way to resolve that thing, something else goes wrong that screws up the tools you're using to help you get out of the first situation, and they compound each other further and further as new things go wrong to the degree that you're in this catch 22 loop of being kept in a situation that's intolerable to be kept in. And that's sort of where my life has gotten over the last 8 years. Yeah, I'd say about 8 years, about when I got the landlord died at the last living space. And they sold the property out from under us to a con artist who tricked us all out and tried to evict us and squeeze more money out of us. About the time that happened is when things just started to fall apart and I had no structures in place that I could depend on to recuperate. And I would say that's one of those things where like I did my best and I thought I was doing okay on a lot of it where I could pull myself up and make it through. But I was patch jobbing and just scraping by for so long that when things actually just couldn't be held together anymore, it seemed like it all fell apart at once. And it had been falling apart before that, and I hadn't been able to fully repair them. And that's where some of that problem comes from. Fast forward a few years into the process of all that, and um, I've burnt out. I and that's one of those things that I think is worth talking about is what to do when you're burnt out, how to cope with burnout, how to recover from burnout, and how to build a safe system of support and help that you can rely on and benefit from to get yourself out of the situations. And I'm not going to be able to do this from a perspective of somebody who's already figured it out because I haven't. I have not figured this out yet. But it's important to acknowledge that there are certain things that part of this experience, from my perspective at least, is something that people don't see. Like, there's some light talk and careful tiptoeing on the topic of what an autistic burnout can look like. And so there's discussion of, well, sometimes you don't shower. And I was like, yeah, but can we be a little more clear on what that means? This isn't like you skip a shower day. This is like full on, you go days and you get ripe and it's struggling to cope with just how to get that process done. And it's not like it's too lazy or too crushed to be able to do that. That's some of it. But it's like there's a paralysis in the ability to think your way out of your problems and solve your problems. And there are things that I have figured out to do to help me get through those spots. I think it would be worthwhile sharing some of that stuff. And, you know, some of the other day-to-day stuff that I've done for years. Like I have friends who are neurodivergent of some kind or another, and they have conversations about like, what's the hardest chore to take care of in your life? And I'm like, well, the thing is, I'm a systems thinker in a lot of ways. I come up with systems that make it easier for me to do some of this stuff. So like I don't ever really have problems with dishes building up in my sink. And I don't have problems being able to have clean dishes to eat off of. But that's only the case because I've done a very certain thing that works specifically well for me, but is a valuable tool asset for being able to mitigate the problems of burnout when it comes to those kinds of things. It's sort of like there's one of those things where like people talk about coming out of the grocery store, the super Walmarts or whatever, and going like, now where did I park my car? I don't ever have that problem. Not because I have an idiotic memory or anything like that. It's because I park in the exact same spot every time I go. I know where to look for my car because it's in the exact same spot every time. And I get the exact same spot every time I go because I go at roughly a time where it's not as busy. But I also park as far away as possible from the store that I walk my way into. So I'm like, nobody's taking that space because it's too far away for most people to want to bother with. So I know where my car is because it's always in that spot that nobody else wants to take. I know how to find it. It's never missing. I mean, I have a few times been a little upset when I couldn't get that spot, but you know, as long as I'm within a certain number of spaces of that spot, I know where I can find my car. And there have been a few times where somebody with a giant, big old honking beast of a vehicle has parked between the door and my car, and I can't see my car, and I wonder if I parked somewhere else that time. But no, it's usually just somebody just parked right next to me with the biggest vehicle that'll fit in the parking lot, and it's hidden my car behind it. And it's so like I have these little techniques of things that I do that make it easier for me to function. And I don't think I've ever really thought of them as coping mechanisms or techniques for managing my difficulties. But I've become more aware over the last couple of years that, oh, you guys don't do this stuff. You don't understand what I go through to make sure that I have systems in place so that I can cope with things. This isn't normal behavior that I'm doing. This is the normal my life. This is my normal life the things I need to do in order to have a functional system of navigating life. So things like, what do I got to do to get myself clean on a regular basis? What do I got to do to make sure that I have dishes to eat off of and that I don't have dishes sitting in the sink for a week? Like, and like, I don't realize the value sometimes of some of these things until I've had some of the people that I've had to live with who are, in most cases, likely neurotypical, allistic individuals, people who do not have ADHD or autism or things like that. People who don't have any of these things they have to work with, and they just willy-nilly do whatever the heck they feel like on any given period of time, and I'm just, the chaos of that blows my mind away. Like, how do you function if this is the way you do things? How do you function in this way? And it's just like, I can't function that way, and that's why it surprises me and shocks me. Is like, I can't function that way because that breaks the systems I have in place for me being able to navigate some of these problems. I know when I go out for a run of errands that I will have this food ready for me when I come home so that I can eat at regular intervals to manage my digestive problems. Other people they'll go 7 hours without eating a meal. I get lightheaded, I'll pass out if I don't do something somewhere in that process. There are definitely things that I have to learn to do and to navigate my disability, my physical disabilities, my digestive system, my pain issues. And there are things I have to do to navigate life with my neurodivergent status. I don't want to treat it like I don't want to pretend it's not disabling in some regards. But I don't think it's the autistic or neurodivergent brain that's the problem. Yes, it can cause problems when interacting with systems that are less structured and less supportive. But that's part of one of the things I want to talk about a little bit more about, and I think this is the channel to do it in. Maybe. Is talk about, like, I don't necessarily feel like the problem is my brain is different. I think my brain is different, and because of that, working within a system that doesn't accommodate that in the same way that it accommodates other people is the problem. And I could go into that a little bit more in another video. I don't know how I want to structure these. I'm not entirely sure if I want to do a series of shorts and a longer form. I don't know yet. I feel like the risk is running too much on one channel, because that was the issue I had with one of my other channels, is I had too much going on over there that it sort of split up the interest to it so that I couldn't build any real sense of one thing that I was really doing on that channel. So I do debate whether or not it makes sense to be doing starting a small business and how to handle being a neurodivergent person or a disabled person in a system of starting a business and navigating the system as it exists now. I think that feels like it could be cluttered if we don't do it right. And maybe that's just my autistic brain telling me there's a way to do this right, and I have to know what the right way to do it before I do it is. And I can't wait for that to be the case. I can do it wrong, and it's okay. That's one of the things I have to learn as a coping mechanism, is I can do a thing wrong. It's okay. I can always do another follow-up or a reboot or whatever and fix it as we go. So those are my thoughts of the things I want to try to do with this channel. I will see you for the next video. I'm not sure where we're going with that one, but we'll see you then.